Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, then we're good to go.
Hey, let me get your picture back here. There you are. How you been?
I've been doing good. How you been?
Good. I loved your picture or your video from the top of Miao Shan.
Oh yeah, I go up there every week. Tomorrow I go up again.
It looked very refreshing.
Oh yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's quite a walk for me, you know. I'm not as young as I used to be.
No kidding. How old are you anyway?
77.
Really? I got 1 year on you.
You're 1 year older?
I'm your senior.
Oh, I can't believe it.
Yeah, most people can't, you know. All of my Dharma brothers, all through all of my practice, I've seemed like the young one, and I'm actually older than everybody else. I'm actually older than everybody else. My first teacher called me Peter Pan, the guy who never grew up.
Oh, well,
And I feel that way sometimes. Let's put it this way: it's a shock when I look in the mirror because there's this guy, and I don't feel like that look. That doesn't work.
yeah, well, the good thing is that we're both pretty mobile.
It's we're both blessed in that way, and I believe I could make that hike with you.
Oh
Although
yeah, I'm sure you could.
I don't do, I used to hike in the mountains here every summer, but I haven't done that recently.
Why?
Um, well, actually, there used to be a group of people that I went with, and I used to have a dog. I'd like to take him, and I don't. The dog died, so I don't have him. I probably should, you know, because it's not just the exercise. It's experiencing that environment that's so good for your what?
Well, that's
For your
why I go up. It connects you with nature and your the feng shui of the whole land that you're on, and it has a. It's not like you say. It's not just about the exercise. I don't go up necessarily for the exercise, but I go up for the whole experience, and it also you can really in nature it magnifies how all your false thinking, how much you, even when you think you're silent, how much you talk.
Yeah, so true. Yeah.
You know, it's the one of the things I like about that particular hike is it's technically quite difficult, you know, like people fall and like when they go up with me first time, they always slip and fall 3 or 4 times. It's steep, it's clay on like little sand on clay, and the sand, I got really great boots, you know, for that hike. Without boots, it's very difficult.
So it's not like a trail, it's more like a scramble up the top.
It's very steep, and going down is very hard on the knees. So you got to pay attention to what you're doing. If you don't, you're going to fall on your butt and hurt yourself.
Yeah.
And you really got to look out and make sure you're walking mindfully, because it is easy to slip. Nowadays, there's a whole group of kids that go up with me a lot of times, the school students, and that's really a lot of fun because they can slip and fall and it doesn't matter. That go with me. Last week, there was like 5 that wanted to go on Sunday, but unfortunately, I had an arrhythmia that day, so I couldn't join them. So I went on, my arrhythmia cleared up by Monday, so I went up on Monday.
You have a regular arrhythmia of your heart?
Yeah, every 10 days.
Oh, really?
And then it lasts about 24 to 48 hours and it goes away.
Do you do anything to fix it? Do you do breathing pranayama or physical movements, or what do you do?
Well, sometimes I'll go into town, I'll eat a pound of fish, and that clears it up within an hour or two. I get on my bicycle and ride and drink lots of liquids, but it's almost impossible for it to last less than 24 hours, no matter what I do.
And how long has this been going on?
About 15 years.
Hmm.
Yeah. Luckily, I have very good thin blood naturally. And so my risk of stroke is about as low as you can get. But for an arrhythmia that lasts that long, there is a risk.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah, because, you know, the blood backs up behind the heart. And when you convert to sign, it shoots through.
What does it feel like?
I can't feel it usually. I can tell when I convert, but I can't feel it in my chest shooting that blood through.
So how do you know you have arrhythmia? What does it feel like?
Oh, I know right away. I can tell generally I feel a little bit uneasy right away. My whole body feels that it's, you know, it's like to come down on a really bad coffee or something, you know, where you all of a sudden you feel tired and wired instantly. Even if you're on top of the world, you're feeling really good. All of a sudden you feel tired and wired. I know it the moment it goes out of sign. And I can feel it physically. I feel weaker because when you're having an arrhythmia, your heart works twice as hard to accomplish half as much. You know, it's out of rhythm, so it beats really irregularly, so it doesn't accomplish as much. So it works a lot harder. But you know, for me, it's one of those things that, you know, except for the fact that I can't do really strenuous stuff, it cuts my whole energy about in half. Otherwise, it doesn't bother me too much. Yeah. Sometimes you can convert by heavy exercise. So you got to understand your body. Sometimes an ice cold shower, like sometimes I'll take the shower 5 o'clock in the morning. It's 32 degrees in the building, you know, so it's very cold.
Yes, I remember.
Good. So yeah, that's what's going on. Oh, I wanted to say something, you know, that was kind of short-sighted of me, you know, that on our last conversation, I was saying how, you know, when I left, you said you didn't meditate for recite the Shurangama for like 20 years or whatever, 10 years. And I said, well, I never missed a day. But then I thought about it later and I said, yeah, but you didn't go to music school or build
In what?
I thought to myself, yeah, but you didn't go, me speaking to myself, you didn't go to music school or learn how to learn anything or teach either. So of course it's you can't compare. It's completely different apples and oranges.
Actually, I had a question about that too, because you told me something about the way you practice it and recite it with breathing, as a breathing kind of thing.
Yeah.
Is
I
that
still
like
do that.
What?
I still do that. Not just the Shurangama, but every mantra I recite, and sometimes I even often I use a metronome also. You know, like I practice the breathing with the mantra, inhaling and exhaling extremely slowly. For example, a 2-minute inhale and a 2-minute exhale while reciting, you know, like reciting.
So you inhale on the inhale and on the exhale, you're reciting?
Yeah.
Are you moving your lips or just
that's a very good question, because naturally I like to recite out loud. So that makes the whole breathing thing very, very, very different. So because when you're reciting out loud, of course, you only can recite on the exhale, you know. And so that's one of the things I'm really having a bit of a problem with, especially lately, is because I really like the rhythmic breathing in and out while I'm reciting and regulating my breath, but it's impossible to do it the way that when you're reciting aloud, because but aloud is supposed to be the most effective as far as inviting Dharma protectors and so forth into your practice.
I have another question about this. I mean, I'm interested in this right now because I myself, I bought Dharmamitra Heng Shou's Avatamsaka Sutra, and I'm reciting it every day, and it's become a kind of pranayama. I'm very conscious. Now I only recite on the exhale, but my inhale is very conscious. It's always through the nose and very full. And then I recite usually until I'm empty. Although sometimes, like if it's a verse, I will inhale for each verse or something like that. But for example, did you ever practice just a pure pranayama?
No problem. But when I do slow breathing, really slow breathing, it's a challenge to inhale and exhale. Well, inhaling and exhaling 60 times in a minute, in an hour is easy. Inhaling and exhaling 30 times is difficult. So the interesting thing to me is it's easier for me. This time I tried it, probably because of all the Qián practice. I was already, as far as times go, on the expert level of Iyengar's system. He had Light on Pranayama, Iyengar's book. He has a whole course for it's like 12 or 10 different levels. And he takes you through all the levels over a period that lasts about 18 months, and you master each level. So I got a hold of his book, and I was looking at the timings, because Iyengar is very precise. He's amazing. He's the greatest yoga teacher because of his precision. And he's careful to warn people what can be dangerous and stuff and what not to do. He also was celibate his whole life after his wife died, so I have to respect that. But like when I first started doing pranayama, it was sort of accidental. What happened was I was meditating one day, but I've only recently done these really slow, long inhales and exhales. Like a year or two ago, I started those. If you look on my YouTube page, I got a picture of me blowing a straw, bubbles in the jar for 2 minutes, exhale. That's one thing I learned from Tibetan monks. It's a real fun thing. It's a real way to learn how to play those horns. That's how they practice. They practice to see if they can keep the bubbles going forever, 15, 20 minutes, half hour. But I didn't learn their technique, but I just did it just to regulate my breath, learn how to regulate my breath, because it's kind of fun. You have a glass with a straw and you blow the bubbles, and you try and keep it very consistent, like even amount of bubbles, and the bubbles don't lie. You can't blow bubbles and be taking in air at the same time. The Tibetans can, but the way I'm doing it, you can't. In the Tibetan system, you're not supposed to do what I'm doing. You're supposed to actually exhale while you're inhaling. Like I guess.
Yeah, some musicians can do that. Some
Yeah.
trumpet players, they can be playing a note and then they can breathe in and keep the note playing while they breathe in and just keep going.
Yeah.
That's different though. That's different. That's kind of like a trick. But that kind of retention, and what do you think? I'm just curious. I actually, the kind of yantra yoga that I do, there is a pranayama. Usually, the most important, the inhale is not that long, maybe, but the retention, you retain longer and longer and longer. Then the exhale is usually longer than the inhale, and then the retention on the bottom is that's a call, an empty hold. That's important too. My question is, I haven't done, I'm not committed to it, and I haven't practiced it like you have, obviously. What is it for?
It's for
When you're retaining your breath, is that giving you some kind of samadhi presence, or a special kind of is that a door to wisdom or something?
110%. That's why I started. That's why Heng Chi in New York also practices that. He's a big time practicer of that. And the reason is that the reason I started was I noticed there's a lot of subtext when I'm reciting my mantras. You know, I notice that I can be pretty deep into mantra recitation, but there'll still be verbalization in my head. So that's when I decided that I'd integrate the breath to address that, and it worked. And so like the whole point of the pranayama, it goes on the philosophy of that if the breath stops, thoughts stop. If the thoughts stop, breath stops. So pranayama works on the proposition that if you slow down your breath, you're going to slow down your thought, and you're become more aware of your thought. I think it works 100%. I think basically recitation of mantras without regulation of breath is a waste of time. Completely. I think what you're doing with the avatamskas, you're plugging into because you intuitively know from former practice that that's the way to do it. Regulating of breath when you're reciting.
Well, I will, yeah. I think that's true. I think it definitely feels right. But there is an interesting thing. I'm also interested. I feel like the Chinese have this site, I know you recited. You sent me a CD once of you recited some kind of a. It wasn't a sutra. It was some kind of a shastra. I can't remember what it was.
Manjushri Nam Samgiti. That's what I recite every day.
Oh.
Manjushri Nam Samgiti is chanting the names of Manjushri. And it's about a 45-minute prayer that I do every single day in Sanskrit.
In Sanskrit, so.
Yeah, but that one I don't pay too much attention to breath. That one I pay more attention to just letting the prayer take over my thoughts and everything. It's very powerful. They recite it every single day in every single Buddhist temple in India and Nepal.
But when I recite in English, what the Avatamsaka is like. It's not like a shastra at all. It's called Mahavaipulya for a reason. That's exactly what it is. It's just expansive. It's just, and so you can recite. So I don't plan on it, but sometimes I find myself reciting it like giving the meaning of the sentence, the emphasis, like you were reading a declaration. But sometimes I intone it so that each phrase goes up and it comes, and when the phrase ends, it goes down. Like so, it's got kind of a tune, not a tune, but a chanting tone to it.
Like a meter?
And, what?
Like a meter?
No, it doesn't have. I never do it with a meter. Although when I recite like what I would call meaning, when I'm using the music shows. There's a music, right, to speech, and when the music shows the meaning, like the way we're speaking now, our voices go up and down. It slows and it speeds up. That's one kind. But if you intone it, then the rhythm gets more even, and you stay on one tone for a long time, and then at the end it might go down, and then it go up again and stay on that tone a long time. So I hope by the end, by the way, I'm on the last chapter now. The last chapter is 1/3 of the sutra, however.
Yeah, that's the most fantastic chapter in the whole world. That is the most beautiful. I cry when I read that, like I cannot help but cry. That is the most amazing journey of the mind ever. You know, that's
Mm.
totally out there. Yeah.
I have to say, since I started reciting, when I bow to the Buddha, it's completely different now.
Yeah, it's the most, it's a, you know, Heng Shou, Heng Shou, New York, you should talk to him about that. He recites it every day religiously since he left Shifu decades ago.
Mm.
He
He mentioned that he's not in New York anymore, though. He's somewhere else. I think he's in North Carolina.
North Carolina.
Yeah. So
he built a big house.
I'm living in a much I'm living pretty nice too. You know, my wife's died. I have this big house. I shouldn't live in such a big house, but I do have toys for my grandchildren. Sometimes I babysit, and but you're living the monk's life now. You're an ascetic again.
Yeah.
Or have you always been an ascetic?
I've always been pretty ascetic, you know, like even when I was filthy rich and made millions of dollars in the stock market, you know, I'd buy stuff for other people, but I live very ascetic, you know, and you know, like very minimum of things, you know, tried to have one of everything, and you know, I wore the same clothes all until they wore out, that kind of thing. You know, like, well, I didn't know until like just a few years ago. Maybe I got it wrong, but you know, I was in the Buddha hall one day. This is when I was really doing heavy practice in TM, which was the entire time here, 7.5 years. But Shifu was sitting in the center of the hall. We were doing our evening recitation. Then it was the break before lecture. And some monk came up to me, I don't remember who, and said, Shifu told me to ask you if you want to go to Asia on an Asian tour with him. And he said, let him know. And so, you know, like we're not supposed to think of anything too long. So that monk left and I was standing there and I thought, I was just so excited. Of course, I thought, yeah, that's fantastic. Finally, I'm going to, you know, I'll have a break, you know. But as soon as I saw my heart jump, I thought, then who's going to be in TM meditating all day and protect TM? Because I was the only one meditating in TM all day. And then I thought, then that morally that's wrong to just leave TM and just go on a holiday in Europe or in Asia. So I walked up to Shifu, and he was sitting in the middle of the Buddha hall, and I kneeled down in front of him, and I said, Shifu, I'm not going to go to Asia. As soon as those, you know how sometimes you say something and you know you made a big mistake? It was one of those times. As soon as I said those words, there was a few things that happened, but like actually Hung Dao walked up and interrupted me right while I was telling him this, that I wasn't going. All the conditions changed, and I thought, I knew right away I had made a mistake, that that Shifu really wanted me to go. I had done those fasts, and Shifu thought I would probably go crazy if I stayed in TM. And he probably thought it would be good for me to go somewhere, and it'd be good for the monastery too, because he wanted somebody to take on tour. And I didn't know it at the time, but a few years later, somebody came up to me and they wanted to bring me to Taiwan. And they said, you should come to Taiwan. This was right after my fast. They said, you're more famous in Taiwan now than Shifu is. I said, I don't want to go to Taiwan, you know, and that was the end of it. But, you know, that's what happened. And then I didn't go, I stayed in TM. But what was really great about it is I really felt terrible before Shifu left and before that tour began. I don't know how long it was afterwards, probably a couple of weeks, and then he left. I really felt bad about it. Once once I started meditating again in TM, and I decided the decision has been made, you're not going to go, forget it. And I started meditating in earnest in TM, and I made more progress than I did any time in TM. Well, the whole time everybody was gone. So, you know, whether it would have been better ultimately going or not going, I don't know, because somehow it was like I was getting embraced by, you know, my mother or something. Everything calmed down, my agitation calmed down, and I got into really a good meditation streak for a few months after everybody left. But I wanted to share with you that because you don't know that background. And then I didn't know that, I never thought about, well, if I didn't go, it never occurred to me who went. But then I was talking to, this was just a couple of years ago, I was talking to some of the people here. We were just talking old times, and they brought it up. And, you know, you didn't go on that Asian tour, but Paul, you know, who took your place? I said, no. And they said, oh, Heng Chi did. So I never knew that until just recently, you know, that you took my place.
So that's how I got there, huh?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It was a great experience.
My loss is your gain. Yeah.
And you know, this was right after I came out of seclusion, and I told you I was kind of in samadhi still. I was just like kind of, I don't know. I didn't come out of seclusion strong and confident. I came out of it like a little baby, learning my way in the world again. Yeah.
Vulnerable.
Yeah, vulnerable.
Right? Yeah. But if you went on that tour after you came out of seclusion, I don't think that could have been the same tour, because I left in 82. So when did you come out of seclusion?
So then you're right. So the tour you missed was the one where Shifu. This is a small peanuts. The thing is, will you be making progress, or are you going downhill? And that's the only thing you thought about. So a lot of people who come, you know, for healing, Shifu would pay no attention, or he would kind of torture them a little bit. Did I tell you the story of the guy with cancer who came? He was I think he might have been from Taiwan or maybe Malaysia. He was Chinese, and he would come to the Buddha Hall every day and ask for Shifu. He had a death sentence. He was going to die, and Shifu kept he would ask. She would, you know, every day. These guys almost falling over, and he would ask Shifu, please heal me. I have a family and I have kids and da-da-da-da. And Shifu said, well, something in the past. It's your karma. This is just karma, and you should think about it. What did you do? And I don't remember exactly, but it seemed like he came back every day for a week with a new thing that he did. And Shifu would say, no, it's not that. And the meme was, to me, it was obvious that Shifu was playing with him. He's a dying man. And Shifu was just playing with him. And finally, he said he liked to eat fish eggs. He liked to eat raw. And Shifu said, that's it. When you eat all those fish eggs, I'll think of all the lives that you were taking at that, he said. And then Shifu, this is amazing. And then Shifu said, okay, how many years do you want? Shifu told, here's the dying man. He said, how many years do you want? And so you could see the guy, you know, his brain is going like this. I don't want to be greedy. You know, how could you answer a question like that? You know? And so finally he said, 10 years. I would guess he was probably 55 or 60, maybe. Yeah, I said 10 years. And Shifu said, okay, 10 years. He said, but if you'd asked for 20, I would have given you 20. This is true. Shifu said that. He said, okay, you can have 10. But if you'd asked for 20, well, it's kind of like those parables of Jesus where the guy has to have faith. If you have the faith, if the guy had had the faith, the confidence to ask for 20 years, then Shifu would have given him 20.
Tell me now, how are you doing your pranayama every day? What method are you using?
So I use this yantra yoga thing, but I don't do.
You mean
this
that one that's what's his name, Figario or something that wrote that book on pranayama?
Fabio, his name is Fabio Fabio Andrico.
Yeah.
Fabio Andrico.
Is that the one you're following? That pranayama?
It's his teacher is Namkhai Norbu Rinpoche. It's the same guy that Heng Shou is following. He's passed now. But I met this guy. This is the guy who he was really a yoga kind of. He was kind of like you. He'd been in India and practiced yoga with a lot of different teachers before he ever met the Tibetan master. And then since then, the yoga, the yantra yoga, which Namkhai Norbu himself personally taught, he actually personally taught. There are videos of Namkhai Norbu actually doing some of the yoga, and it is at least as much pranayama as it is yoga, because all of the body movements are to guide the breath, to guide the prana, I should say, really is better to say it. So every movement is the function of the motion. And if you saw it, your big impression would be there's always movement. It doesn't stop. You don't stop in a certain posture. The only time there's a stop in the movement is when you're holding a breath, when there's a hold. And there are 5 kinds of holds. There are 5 different ways of holding the breath. You know about that?
What are the 5?
The 5 is open hold. And this is it's very comfortable, but it just comes up and it's almost like you want it to keep breathing, but you can't anymore. You just hold it up there. That's the one. And then there's a directed hold. And when you do a certain movement, there's a kind of, you stop when you do that particular, when that movement stops, there's a pressure that pushes, your lungs are full, but you're pushing, there's a feeling of a downward pressure on the breath.
But
and then
the navel region?
Hmm?
Towards the navel region?
Usually, well, it can be in the top. Like there's stand-up ones where we're going like this, and when you go like this, you feel the pressure, but it doesn't go all the way down. There is sometimes this. It's called a directed hold, and when you're holding this leg like this, and you're strong twist, and you really feel strong pressure here, and then you feel the strong pressure here. That's called a directed hold. The third hold is the empty hold, and then it's down here, and it's like you have a box here. It's like you can feel the breath
on the exhale. After the exhale.
No, this is in. It's in. You're holding the breath, but instead of up here or pushing down, it's held right here. And you don't. And when the movements guide this, the way you're moving and the position of your body. But in this case, it's really not possible to hold much breath up here. So but you feel it down here, like this. But it's just held there. There's no, and then there's the restricted hold, and this is where the breath is down here like in an empty hold, except you bring the navel, you pull the navel towards your back. So you pull in on the breath down at here. That's called a constricted hold. There are Tibetan names for that, but I don't remember that. And then the last one is the empty hold, where you just set so at the end of a movement, like for instance, when you do the plow, your feet come over like this, and then you pause there with completely empty. And it's a relaxed empty.
On the exhale?
Again, yeah. So that's after the exhale. The empty hold is you exhale, you've emptied completely, and your body is gone in a movement that forces all the air out, and then you just stay there for
So in
4
that
counts.
in that system you just described, it's all standing?
No. So there's 4 different yantras. 3 of them are preparatory, and then there are the actual yantras, which are 5, one for each hold. But there are 5 series, so there are 5 ways of doing the 5 holds.
So a total of 25.
Total of 25. No.
And so those are standing or sitting or both?
It's both.
Both.
Mm-hmm.
Both, all of that you just described is in a single session, or do you just do, a certain amount one session or a certain amount another?
If you did this, like a real hour and 30-minute session, you would start with warm-ups. You do there's 5 sigjungs, where you're shaking the legs and doing very vigorous breathing. There's no holds in this. It's just very vigorous breathing and getting everything loose. And then there are what are called the 8 movements. And these are like kind of the count is only 2. Just a 2 count for each, a 2 count inhalation and a 2 count exhalation. But there is a hold in each one of the 8 movements. And again, you go through in the 8 movements, there's not an empty hold. There's no empty hold. But there is a slow exhalation, and there is a quick exhalation, and a quick inhalation as well in that. Again, this is really kind of preparatory. And then there's, which is really nice, is the sadul.
By the way, your face is getting cut off in the video, so aim your computer.
Okay.
Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
I guess I'm getting excited. You can tell I do this every morning. I love it.
So you take an hour and a half on that pranayama every morning?
No, I don't. So I don't do this. I'm just saying you can do it any way you want. I do about 40 minutes in the morning.
That's a lot for pranayama. That's pretty good. Because if you do too much, it can mess with your nervous system.
Well, I'm counting the warm-ups. I'm counting warm-ups, and the pranayama that I'm doing is not extreme like what you can do. Like the yantras are in counts of 4. So you exhale for 4 counts, and they're about heartbeat counts, and then you hold for 4 or maybe 6.
But what is a count? Like a count can be like
count is a heartbeat. Basically
my count is 12 a minute. I use a metronome, so my count is 12 a minute. I already know what it is.
I see.
Yeah.
So is that your heart rate?
No, I just use that because my metronome won't go any lower.
No, the counts here are pretty much heart. The
72 or so.
So about 60. It's a little bit slower than your heartbeat.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's not extreme like that. And the movements are, well, for me, it's quite vigorous. It's not easy to master. I really only have the first 5. I haven't gone through all 25.
Yeah, but
and then there's the third one is called sadul, which is called it's really prana, and it's all done on the open hold. Like you're sitting and you expand like this, and with all the hair in your body, then you clap and you rub and you rub your you just massage your legs up and down, and then
you're holding it the whole time until the very end when you go, I see. That's good. Very good.
And those are some of that requires balance, like where you have to stand on one leg, or you hit yourself like this.
Yeah. That's Tibetan. What you just did is very Tibetan.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this. That's Tibetan.
then-
I don't know any of that. I never did
Mm.
that. But what
And
you
in
just did is exactly what, if you go to YouTube on, you'll look at a video called Yogis of Tibet, you'll see that doing that exact movement you just did.
And that is supposed to be done with balanced prana, which means your solar channel and your lunar channel needs to be balanced. And so there's a special exercise for balancing the prana, make sure that both channels are at least equal or more solar than lunar.
Yeah.
And so that's the third set, and then the last set is the actual yantras.
What's the yantra?
So the yantra is a set of 5. The first one's going to be an open hold. Second one is going to be a directed hold. The third one is going to be a closed hold. The fourth one is going to be a constricted hold. And the last one will be an empty hold. And each one of those is what? 18 counts. So it's not that long.
Each one is 18 counts?
Each of them.
So
you do, most of them you do 3, most of them you,
it sounds like it's about a minute and a half.
And you do each one 3 times. Although, no, there's one, the directed hold you do only twice because you do it by side. But everyone that's equal, then you do them 3 times. So, very nice.
Yeah, that whole thing takes you 40 minutes in the morning. And then
I don't do all of it. So on one day, I do warm-ups and then the first 2. And then the next day I do warm-ups and the other 2, the last 2. And that's 40 minutes.
Yeah,
so to do the whole thing
really important.
Or if I did the whole thing, it would be about an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah.
For me, I feel I should do the warm-ups because my body is.
Yeah,
so
I find the warm-up for myself very important. Like after I'm doing my breathing for about a half hour, it gets a lot easier and I can go longer and it gets easier after I do a half hour or so. And then in the evening, what do you do?
Nothing. I might do a little bit of the pranayama, but I don't do anything special.
When are you doing the Avatamsika recitation?
I usually do it in the afternoon.
Oh, like what time?
It's not fixed. Maybe 3 o'clock or something like that.
Oh, and you do like an hour or something?
No, half hour. 1 half hour a day.
And that's the one you do also with the breathing, right?
Yes. And it's been an experiment because I was never into reciting sutras at CTTB. I was jealous of the Chinese people because they seemed to have so much fun at it. But for me, it was kind of a chore. But I'm really enjoying this. I'm really having a good time.
Yeah.
I'm also keeping track of all of because when you're reciting, when there's a word missing, something missing, it messes up so you're alerted to it. Like if you were just proofreading something, you would never catch all these things. I have a long list of words that are left out or extra word added or stuff like that, which I'll send maybe to Heng Chi just in case if they ever republish it. It's really quite an accomplishment. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it, but I don't have it.
So
yeah, I've seen the book.
This is the last chapter.
Wow. Yeah, that's quite a good karma he's earning.
Yeah. Actually, this is the 3rd chapter. There's notes. He has notes, and then he has a synopsis. he wrote a synopsis of the whole sutra here.
Yeah, that's really good. That's very helpful for people. It's nice to read those synopses because then when you read the sutra, you got a broad idea of what is going to happen, and it helps to understand.
So I tried that, but I didn't find it helpful. So I just plunged into the sutra, and I was very confused for a few chapters, but then I realized this is not something you think about. Just recite it.
Yeah, that's right.
And it soaks in.
Yeah, that's the right.
You can't fight it, man. You can't use a discriminant. I can't imagine trying to analyze this sutra. Again, there's probably no line more common than getting rid of the discriminating mind. You know, it comes up again and again.
Yeah.
So
the Tibetan way, you know, Tibetans, when they recite, because they recite a lot, Tibetans, and they memorize sutras, they say that before you memorize it, until you memorize the whole thing, don't try and understand any of it. None. Don't know the meaning. They say that because you see, to get a geshe degree, it's required even to enter, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama's temple, even to get in, you have to memorize a sutra. So all of the applicants, they memorize a sutra, and everybody says that everyone, they say, they teach that if you want to memorize a sutra, don't know knowing the meaning is an obstacle. So always try and memorize the words only. And then after you've 100% memorized it, then you can study the philosophical points.
You know, Shifu used to say that. Well, he didn't say that, but Shifu used to say, if you haven't memorized it, you don't know it.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the Tibetan way too.
And it also reminds me, my first teacher, my demon teacher, the Mo Wang, he gave us a book by the Dalai Lama and told us to memorize it.
Which one was it?
It was called, I think it was his first English book, and I think it was called The Opening of the Dharma Eye.
Oh.
I wouldn't guarantee it. I did memorize 30 pages of it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. But then our life became very difficult. And I don't know what happened even to my copy of that book.
Yeah,
it was just an ordinary, So
well, you memorized the entire Shurangama. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, I did that. It's hard to imagine. But I studied, as I memorized. Maybe that was a mistake.
Yeah, according to the Tibetan system, that's a big mistake. They say knowing the meaning obstructs the memorization.
It could be. It could be. And it maybe be if I had done it that way, it would have stayed with me longer because it evaporated very quickly. As I was memorizing it, I would just recite it every day for practice. And so I was always practicing the recitation of it. But I spent the afternoons, I started my day, 5 hours of meditation, straight, just sit down for 5 hours. Then I would recite for the morning, just recite and practice memorizing. The afternoons, I would study. I had big, thick Chinese commentaries on the Shurangama. I try to tease out the meanings. I felt I was making good progress. And then I would start, I would meditate, from another 5 hours from 6 to 11 at night. That was my life.
Did Shifu visit you very often while you were in retreat?
What?
Did Shifu visit you while you were in retreat?
One time.
Wow.
And then never, when I sent him 2 messages, and he didn't reply to either one.
You were in retreat 4 years, and the master came and saw you once, and you sent 2 letters and no reply. You were really in retreat.
I really was. And the one maybe I told you this, so stop me if I don't, if you've already heard this story. Shifu came in with this short little monk, and so I said, there was a kind of a window thing that I had built where they would put the bucket in of my food every day. And it was plexiglass, so it was like, and I could lift it up. And so here was this little monk, and when the little monk saw me, he started to bow, and I saw Shifu grab him like this. Don't bow to him. And then he pointed to me. You bow to him. And so I bowed. I made 3 bows on the other side of the wall. Of course, there was a window there, and most of it was just wall. But there was this opening about this big, and I was kind of puzzled. And then Heng Lu, not Heng Lu, Heng. I can't remember which was. I can't remember, but he was a guy that told me that this was the famous Shaolin Kung Fu master. Fadong.
Yeah.
Fadong? Yeah, Fadong. The guy who can stand on one finger?
Yeah.
And Shifu had brought him to meet me, actually, probably for me, to get a blessing from the old guy. That's the only time I saw Shifu. And the message I sent him.
Did you open the door when you saw him? Did you open the door? Did Shifu come in your room?
I couldn't open any door. There's no doors I can open. I'm locked in.
Oh, wow.
There's no way I could get out. By the way, there was some windows on this side into the hallway, but there was a curtain there. And I couldn't see on the outer side of that curtain. But people could come and look at me. And sometimes I noticed these Chinese monks pulling the curtain aside and peeking at me. I guess I was a phenomenon. But the message I sent first was, after 3 years, 3 months, and 3 days, I sent Shifu a letter, and I put it in my bucket, my bucket that the meal comes in every day. I would wash it and put it back in the morning. Somebody would take it and then put a new bucket there at noon. And I said, I know it's been 3 years, 3 months, and 3 days, but I don't think I'm finished. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to stay in. We had never said how long I was going to be in there. I just knew about the tradition. And he never sent any message back.
So you just stayed in?
Stayed in. Then after 4 years went by, I thought, I'm done here. I'm just cooking sand. There's no more.
Yeah.
There's no. I've run out of gas, and I felt, it's time for me to go back and be part of the community. And so I expressed this to Shifu, but I said, if you think I should stay in here, I'm happy to stay, but I think it's time for me to go back. So it was a question. Again, no answer. Then one day, Shifu said, one of the monks came and said, "Oh, you're coming out today."
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that was not too much later, maybe a couple months later. Somebody came and said, "Shifu says you're coming out today." So.
So that was 2 months or so after you sent after your 4 years, and you sent Shifu a letter saying, "I'm ready to come out." He let you cook in there another 2 months.
Well, I wasn't unhappy. I was, I was a little bit. I felt a little bit guilty for taking all the good stuff.
That's a real retreat. You never left that room for 4 years? Never left?
No. How could I leave? I was locked in.
I never heard of anybody being locked in the retreat.
It's called bìguān. Bìguān means lock the door.
Wow, that's a real retreat. Not many people do that. Like the Tibetan 3 year, 3 month, 3 day retreat. They usually, not at least now. Their retreats. They everybody would meet in the Buddha hall, 1 hour, 2 hours, do recitation every day. Then they'd have a group meeting with the teacher once a day, and then they'd be in their separate rooms. but actually once or twice a day they get out. Yours was a really strict retreat.
You know, Richard, I knew that nobody was really doing it. Hung Dao was in retreat, but you know, every once in a while she would come out and give us a lecture, or we'd get a message from her or something like that. And I knew that wasn't doing it right. And so one of the things I had in mind was, Shifu always said that this was a great way to practice, and nobody was really doing it. And I knew I was ready, so that's why I had the nerve to ask Shifu. That I was ready for that kind of, and it might be a weak point too. It might be a weak point, but that's my nature.
So. I remember when you and I, there was about 2 or 3 years there where you and I were meditating almost every day in Tiān. We were the only ones. You'd meditate in a room a little down from mine, and I remember that. I always knew you were a little bit stronger meditator than me. So when I heard you went into retreat, I knew that you could do a good job, because I myself could meditate fairly well, but I knew that you had a more skill than I did.
I don't know about that, Richard, but do you think there's a problem? That's quite a gig. I should try that. Huh? But anyway, so I was just a preface to I really feel really nice about my meditation right now. You know, when I stopped meditating. I told you I stopped meditating for 20 years, and then I read Schopenhauer, and then I started meditating again. I've meditated ever since then. That was 2012. And the first thing I did was try the Shurangama method of meditation. By the way, did you practice Huatou?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I did the Huatou. That was, boy, it was powerful tool for me. And I didn't have that before I met Shifu. Shifu was the one who introduced me to Huatou. And I don't know, but it was just the right thing for me. And so even while I was studying the Shurangama, I didn't use the Shurangama method, return the hearing, to hear the hearing. I didn't use that at all. But when I read Schopenhauer, something clicked. I should try that meditation. So I did that meditation for maybe an hour, a year or so. And in the Shurangama, it talks about one of the markers in your progress is the senses become mixed. You hear with your nose, and the senses get mixed up. And I kind of came to that place where hearing wasn't really hearing anymore. It was because you're so inwardly directed on the beginning of the senses that it kind of, you get, before the senses happen, whatever part of the mind that is. And so
it's not part of your mind. Before the senses happens is just to the right of the heart. That's where it's at. That's where the I arises, intention arises, right at the heart region. That's why when you die, when you die, if you put your hand on somebody's chest, I took 30-hour course from a master of this. You put your hand on somebody's chest when you're doing the consciousness transference for them, you can feel the heat of the I, the self, Atma, rising and leaving out through the top of the head. And if the person was a really bad person, you can feel the heat going from the center of the heart out through the feet. So before you smell anything, before you hear anything, before you see anything, before you taste anything, before you feel a sensation, and before you have any kind of discriminating thought, before any thought you have, the I exists as an, I believe, apperceptively, you know, turning back on itself. I'm not sure, but before any experience, any awareness, the I arises, is there. It arises before.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And another thing, I think I might have told you about this, but in the Dzogchen tradition, that Namkai Nyorbu, there's something they call pointing at the mind.
Yeah.
And I only met him one time. And on that time, he did several initiations of tantras, and then he taught us how to do Dzogchen. And he gave us instructions, and we're all sitting there. And then he pronounced this word, mantric word. It's spelled P-H-A-T, but it's pronounced like pet.
Fa. It's the end of that's what you recite when you're doing the conscious transference for somebody. You recite a mantra and you go fa, and it's a very, very powerful exhalation with it, explosive. And if you do it, well, when you're doing your regular practice of this consciousness transference, just to get good at it and doing it as a practice, you do that fa. It's so loud, you have to go someplace else. I know people that do it, and myself did it. You got to get out of your house where anybody can hear you. I used to go into a car and do the practice, because you really have to do an explosive fa, you know. And and if you do that, if you do that when somebody's dying and you know the right prayers, you can send them out with that fa, you know, and it's very auspicious way of leaving the body, sending somebody out.
Anyway, so I had a big response when he did that.
Oh,
and
yeah,
guess where it was?
Who
right
did it?
here.
Who did it?
The master, Namkai Norbu Rinpoche. He was.
Yeah,
this was the
yeah.
pointing to the mind.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah,
had no
yeah.
I had no idea what was going on. So I said, well, that's interesting. And that's all.
Yeah.
And then 20 years later, I have a memory of this. And I said, oh, wow. And then my whole meditation changed, just changed.
Yeah.
And so I practiced this Dzogchen. I mean, I've been trying to practice it for a long time, but it's only, so he planted a seed there. It didn't, I wasn't, no Kaiwu there, but I did experience this. And then when I remembered it exactly, then my meditation changed. And it's so easy to sit now, and where you can not just be in samadhi, but you don't have to even try to, you can just follow your samadhi. You just follow it instead of guarding it. You know, you can guard your samadhi, make sure you're no false thoughts, but you can also just let it go.
It's a different stage. That's Mahamudra, and it's a different stage. But you know, it's
Mahamudra. I don't know about this. You know about a lot more about Tibetan Buddhism than I do. But there's Mahamudra and Dzogchen are like the kind of two top kinds of meditation, and so I think Dzogchen is actually the meaning of Dzogchen is the great perfection.
Yeah.
And the Mahamudra is the great sign or the great symbol, something like that.
Yeah, I like to say great attitude.
Oh.
Yeah, but that's just my preference. But they all mean the same thing. It's an all-embracing attitude. Dzogchen is probably a little bit more advanced of a practice.
I don't know anything about that.
Yeah,
I think I got a great gift, and but it took a long time for me to catch on what it was about. Yeah. So yeah, so.
Yeah, it's you know, like the I thought, like I do a lot of analytical meditation, you know, reasoning, analysis. And like if you really get into it, you can feel the I and sense how the actual word I, it doesn't ever arise in the head ever. like all of the words and phrases, all discriminating thoughts happening in the head, the I word is the only one that happens in the heart. And Ramana Maharshi, the great saint, says that it's actually not in the center of the chest, but slightly to the right of the heart and just off center towards the heart. And if you really sit in stillness and really get into it and you forget yourself, you can experience that the uniqueness of the I, the self, this idea
The
of
seventh consciousness, the manas.
yeah, it's there. It's in the heart region. It's not in the head at all. It's the only that's why it's such a unique word. And if you really sit, you can see that the real power is in the heart.
I can sense it. Yeah. But I really don't. By the way, just one thing. when you got, what's your Go name?
Hong.
Go Huang? And what does it mean?
Go Hong, Hang. It means fruit boat. Fruit boat.
Did you ask Shifu why he gave you that name?
I don't know. But it could be interpreted in very different ways. So I don't know. You never know what Shifu meant, but the Hong Kong always made kind of sense to me because I could always let go very easily.
That's what I was going to ask you. When you got that, because I don't know if you know this, but we always considered you the empty one, But Hong Kong, we knew that name, and Hong Kong, it was kind of a twinkle in your eye when you said Hong Kong, because it was just exactly the right name for you.
Yeah, I don't know, but that's my Hung name is Hong Kong, constantly empty.
I suspect, you've been at this for a few more kalpas than I have. That's my suspicion.
Yeah, it's hard. I don't know. We all have I know that you've always been a better meditator than me, but I'm really slow in some ways, but I always get there. I always bounce around, and I do things that make a lot more mistakes than you, I think, but I can make more mistakes and finally get it right. You kind of
well, that requires it requires emptiness. Because if you're not empty, those mistakes hurt and they last and last and last.
Oh yeah, I don't recall Shifu ever hurting me. And I look at it as like no expectations. And you're going to get some things right, you're going to get some things wrong, and just let go of it. That's why that's one of the reasons. I can practice Mahamudra fairly naturally, maybe more even than Dzogchen. Mahamudra is like having this, great expansive view. It's like people hold on to things. I kind of invented the analogy, like if you have like I have behind me, this big blank wall with nothing on it, and you have a little marker pen and you mark something on it, then anybody who comes in the room, they'll see that marker. Their eyes are drawn to it somehow. But if you have that same size marker and you expand the wall all the way to the sun, nobody's even going to notice that in a million years. So that's kind of like what Mahamudra is about. It's having this expansive attitude. And one of the things that I found very helpful for developing that attitude, that all-embracing attitude, is like realizing that you're not an individual. You're not an individual, that you're affected by all the other people in your whole life and in the whole planet, and you're creating causes with everybody. So if you understand that and you forget yourself in meditation through that method of realizing you're one with all beings. So it's like you're all drinking from the same well, basically. You're not getting just your water. You're drinking the same water as everyone else, and you're getting the same benefit from that water as everyone else is. Then you kind of lose yourself in the whole process. And then any kind of hangups or things that happen to you, like anything mean that happens to you or anything that's said to you or any hurtful thing, you just kind of wash it out with all the other living beings in the world and you forget it. But if you think of yourself as an individual, then all of your other things, then your little hurts really hurt because you think you're an individual. But if as an individual, you think you're like the body of humanity is your body, then you just kind of like, okay, I'll just pretend it belongs to somebody else. And if you get good enough at pretending, then you forget the whole thing or who it even belongs to. Who does that hang up belong to anyway? Let everybody else carry it with me. I'll carry theirs, they'll carry mine. So that's how, for me, that's what emptiness is. It's just the realizing that you carry other people's burdens, like things that bother other people, I'm really capable of carrying. So I just take on their stuff, and what I'm difficult for me to carry, I just toss out into the universe and let them carry it. So it's just like everybody has their strengths and weaknesses. You realize, well, I have mine and they have theirs. So I'll give them mine and I'll take on theirs, so you forget which is which and who is who, so, it's like also desire is the same thing. You have a real desire for something and you think, well, let somebody else fulfill that desire. And, something I'm neutral on, I'll take on for my own self that I don't care about, but I'll indulge in that, whatever it is. So that's how you can get past this. It's the person that, that gets attached. And if you get rid of the person and you become impersonal, impersonal is where it's really happening. It sounds very far-fetched, but it's really what's happening.
One last question. The question is, what's it like to get old? Do you feel mortality pressing in on you?
No. We had this conversation, like Roger told me the other day. I saw Roger like 2 days ago, and I just told him, if you ever see me wandering around and I have trouble getting around, just run me over. Like when it's, what we all, I don't feel it's pressing, and I can tell that you don't either. So like it's, what's there to be pressing about?
For me, it's even better than that. It's increasingly better. Death is increasingly welcome.
Yeah, that's the right attitude. That's the right attitude. We're just trying to attain clarity into as much as we can as we're growing, and we realize we have our mistakes, strong points, and weaknesses. And I realized one of the things that you asked me, what do I think about my mortality? One of the things that I've kind of done lately is, like, I always tried to push myself so much, like until recent years, I would be very extreme in doing things. And so like right now, I'm kind of like coming to a little bit of a peace, where, okay, so, you let it go.